is the way. That is the phrase heard over and over again in Disney's Lucasfilms. Star Wars is The Mandalorian. And it's also the name in Hebrew for Jewish law, halakha, the path, the way. Something which we walk down and are led down or bring others down by our actions and our own journeys. In this week's parashah, in this week's Torah portion, we read, "And Yaakov went out from Beersheba and went towards Haran. And he arrived at the place, Hamakom, and remained there all night, because the sun had set. And he took of the stones of the place and put them beneath his head, and lay down in that place." A little further in the story, when he woke up, he stood up the one stone, anointed it with oil, and said, "This place is Beit El, the house of God. God was in this place, and I didn't know it." Where was that place that God was, and he did not know it? According to some classical sources, he didn't realize on his trip from Beersheba to Haran that he actually ended up on the Temple Mount, and he had found the place where God in some way dwells on earth. But this view is a minority view in the Jewish tradition. Most rabbis, most ancient rabbis, read this text and say, maybe the ladder, the tip of that ladder, went through that place where Abraham had bound Isaac. But the lesson of the story is just like the lesson of Moses taking off his sandals, because God says where he happens to be in conversation with God is holy ground, because the place that we find God is not localized to one location, but God is wherever we are. God is not only at Holy Blossom Temple, at URJ Camp George. God isn't only in my sacred happy space, but God is also in your home. God is also where you are joining with us in worship and prayer, because God is everywhere. God is anywhere where we seek to find God. Today, many of us know that God is with us wherever we are and see God in others. We see God in the kindness of the stranger, in the space of interaction where kindness and mercy raise us all to make our world more sacred. We see the image of God in the other, increasingly so as we become more and more accepting of all human beings in the image of God, not just those that look like me or act like me. But there is one place I feel that we struggle to find God, and that is within ourselves. And Yaakov went out from Beersheba and went towards Haran, and he met Hamakom. He met with the place. Hamakom is one of the names of God. He met with God in the evening, Isaac, his father, was wandering in the field in the afternoon. His grandfather Abraham was with God in the morning, Vayashkem Abraham Baboker. But Yaakov met with God in the evening. This is the way. This is one of the Jewish ways. Each of our patriarchs we find out in our parashah and in this book of Genesis has their own connection to God, which is why in our Avot we say the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and also here the God of Jacob. And just like we're learning in that TV show, the way may be more diverse than we thought. So too in our text, we find that the times we meet with God in the morning, in the afternoon, and the evening are different relationships with the divine. Rabbi Shlomo Yosef Zevin from near Minsk made Aliyah before the state of Israel was founded and celebrated Yom HaAtzmaut through yearly feasts, taught that Shacharit and Ma'ariv, morning and evening meetings with God, represent times in our lives. You might think by this teaching he is saying that when we are young, it is like God is with us like a light, but in the evening, things are harder. But that is not his teaching. He teaches that Shacharit times in our lives are the happy times, when light is flowing and clear and bright. We feel the sun shining on us. We feel great. But there are also sunset times in our lives, which could be in the morning, but in ourselves, we feel dark. We feel lost. He asks, what do we do with that darkness? What does Yaakov do with that darkness in our story? Does he get up and keep on moving from that place and flee as he's fleeing from his brother Esav? No. We don't escape the darkness, he teaches. Rather, we do what we can to become the light. We don't go someplace else, but in that place of darkness, we look around us and we find each of the challenges separate. We go to that place and we find the stones around us and we pick them up. And when we look at the challenges around us and we don't ignore them, but rather raise them up into the light of our eyes, we start to see a bigger picture. We see from one and one, suddenly a community appears. Suddenly, like pieces of a mosaic, we start to see a bigger picture, that things start fitting together. Because we did not flee, but chose in ourselves to find light. The darkness is out there. Abraham, in his life, seemed to mostly move without recognizing it in the world around us. But Jacob is our ancestor who taught us a different way, that there's more than one way to be a good Jew in the world. And that what we sometimes need to do is to look out for those little bits of hurt, those little rocks. And when we gather them, suddenly we might see that they are, in fact, all part of the same stone, and we can stand that stone up and recognize it and see it as a larger picture. We have to seek inside ourselves for that goodness and kindness. We have to seek inside ourselves to find that Hamakom, God, is there too, just like God is everywhere. So let's give space to fan the flames and give God a chance to arise within our souls. Shabbat Shalom.